get it yet, Dylan? No? Here you go. Can you get it?
She says good. She says she's
Okay.
good. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. Newspaper editorial staff has written to defeat OTU, Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, in the court of public opinion and not by legal arguments. We're here today to set that record straight. The court of public opinion has decided that we are wretched in our actions to attempt to let the people have a say, as granted by our state constitution. Contrary to what you've heard in the media, we at Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite don't hate children or education. We appreciate and support our teachers. I'm married to one. Rhonda has children who are teaching. Like 70% of Oklahomans, we want the pay raises to be enacted and believe that they have been because of the definition of words. But the parlor tricks of this legislature and the misinformation campaigns of the unions and their cohorts needs to stop. It's for the children. So was liquor by the drink money, and the education lottery money, and casino gambling, and horse track betting, ball and dice, and now fuel tax, cigarette, and GPT money. Based on the transparency of past revenue-raising measures, why do you suddenly trust the legislature now? Did you know that after 1 year, the funding mechanism known as 1010XX is no longer directed at teacher pay raises? The legislature did that. Did you know, similar to the health department slush fund, the Board of Education and your 520-something school districts sit on enough discretionary funding to cover 1 year of teacher pay raises? Should the legislature be called to fix their rushed work? Local school administrators who ignore 1023XX and freeze teacher pay raises should be held accountable. They are lying to you. Already teachers are being told by their districts that their pay raises are not there. Please know this is false. We see that many have been rightfully informed by some lawmakers that the pay raises are sacrosanct as set by statute, but yet they insist on the claim that we are against education, children, and Oklahoma's future. Those claims couldn't be further from the truth. We have long provided alternatives, even though that is outside our purview, only to have those suggestions fall on deaf ears in the media and the legislature alike. Money comes into government by three means: revenue, reforms, and taxation. We have the revenue. We need the reforms. The taxation was not necessary. Did you know that Oklahoma gross receipts reportedly are up by 15%? You need to see the Oklahoma Treasurer's report dated May 3rd. And that when you tax or regulate growth, you immediately stifle it. Everything screeches to a halt when it's taxed and regulated. Did you know that should the fuel taxes on diesel and gas remain, Oklahoma farmers, teachers, and government services will have an immediate increase cost of living? Local police, fire, and rescue budgets will be affected by higher fuel taxes. Hopefully they don't have to lay off any public servants. Local school boards may have to divert classroom funds to pay increased fuel costs on their fleet of buses and maintenance vehicles. Oklahoma agriculture, your food, will be more expensive in local markets and in school cafeterias. The teachers will invariably have to protest all over again, as their raises will not keep up with this cost due to the short-sightedness of this funding mechanism. HB 1010XX, our petition, is not pro-agriculture, is not pro-business, and it is not pro-education. The long-term effects of raising costs of everything linked to fuel will outstrip any benefits of the tax revenue. Demand the legislature identify revenue the right way the next time they're in session. For now, sign our petition and let the people decide on State Question 799. It's for the children. This unnecessary taxation was only for 1 year, as we said. So teachers, we invite you to join us. You can join our website, oklahomataxpayersunite.com. We invite you to join us because we're fighting for you too. We think that we can build a great coalition, teachers and taxpayers alike. Now I'd like to introduce Rhonda Villamont-Smith.
Good morning. Today we'd like to announce that we are filing a response to the lawsuit filed by education bureaucrats and the POE union to stop the petition drive. Attorney Stan Ward is filing our response with the Supreme Court today. Stan Ward was one of the leading advocates and writers of State Question 640, which allows the people of Oklahoma to decide if a tax levied upon them by the legislature is appropriate. In spite of attacks, both anonymously online and threats, we are not stopping because the people of Oklahoma deserve the truth and transparency in government. The teachers have been lied to and used. House Bill 1023XX, which is the teacher pay raise bill, will still be in effect if the tax increase, House Bill 1010XX, is repealed. The teacher pay raise says it is contingent on the enactment of the provisions of House Bill 1010XX. The teacher pay bill does not say that it is contingent upon the enactment and continued existence of House Bill 1010XX. Enactment means that it's been passed by the legislature. House Bill 1010XX was passed by the legislature. And even if House Bill 1010XX is repealed, it has still been enacted and is thus still in effect upon repeal. The teacher pay raise should have never been tied to 1010XX, which is an unstable revenue source based mostly on volatile oil and gas taxes and on the cigarette tax, which of course we hope is a declining revenue source as more people stop smoking. The fact in the voting record is that 98 members of the House voted yes on the teacher pay raise. So anyone that is claiming that conservative members were against paying teachers at the regional average is patently false. House Bill 1010 is an unnecessary tax increase, which makes teachers and hardworking Oklahomans pay out of their own pockets for additional government growth. It is malfeasance that tax increase supporters include some Republican leaders and that they have allowed this mistruth to be communicated unanswered. On May 3rd, before the end of session, revenue collections for Oklahoma showed a budget surplus of over $1 billion. The governor and legislative leaders should have immediately decoupled the two bills and allowed the teacher pay raise funding to become permanent, tied to the general revenue. Instead, they adjourned, and so we are left to fight. We can correct this by signing the petition. It is up to the people to ensure that 1010XX and 1023XX are decoupled to allow the teacher pay raise to stay with a stable funding mechanism. Please visit OklahomaTaxpayersUnite.com to find out more about our petition. And let us be clear. The pledge that was signed by the candidates and lawmakers was for support of the 4 core functions of government. And quoting our platform, most Oklahomans agree that state and local government should focus on 4 basic areas: public safety, transportation and infrastructure, education, and a safety net for the most vulnerable. The people should want structural reform to transform and eliminate governmental dysfunction, duplication, and corruption. Education and health would be better served by a dramatic downsizing of state bureaucracies with more decisions made locally. This petition for Oklahomans to sign is exactly that. It's returning the power back to you, the people, to be a safety check for a legislature that has allowed waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption of your tax dollars to occur under their watch. All you have to do is turn on the news every day and it's something new. We now know that revenues are growing and that growth can pay for the teacher raise that they deserve. And we can correct this in multiple ways. Number one, Leadership can call a special session and immediately decouple the two bills to give teachers certainty on their funding for their permanent pay raises. Teachers in the meantime should decline to sign their contracts, which do not reflect their pay raises. Number two, teachers and Oklahomans should call their state rep and state senator and demand that they sign on to State Senator Nathan Dom's call for the special sessions, as leadership has failed to act. Please ask your representative and senator to contact State Senator Nathan Dom to facilitate the signing for this session. 3, please sign the petition. If you want this addressed right now, then simply call your state rep and senator to call a special session and address this now, so our teachers can be paid and our children educated. Teachers, decline to sign your contracts if it doesn't include your raises. We look forward to presenting oral arguments on behalf of Oklahomans and teachers to allow a pay raise without more money coming from your pocket. It is time for Oklahomans to hold bureaucrats accountable. The time is now to support education. Thank you. And now I'd like to bring up Dr. Coburn.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you for being here. There's some principles that I embrace that I think we lost in the legislature this year. And I think every true Oklahoman should embrace them. And I know most Americans do. And the first is transparency. Oklahomans ought to get to see what happens and how it happens and why it happens. The second is effective legislation. Do you realize that the penalties that were placed on members who didn't agree with leadership? Do you realize that no amendments were offered to either of these bills because the leadership would not allow it? Do you realize they didn't even have time to read the bills? So what we got was an attempt to help our teachers that is less than straightforward, that in the long run won't help our teachers and will hurt our state. So I'm embracing Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite. I believe it's a way for us to express the accurate principles of three people in making decisions about who represents us and how they do it, and being a secondary watch when the legislature fails to do adequately what it was sent to do. And that's three things. One, oversight, which is totally lacking in Oklahoma. All you have to do is look at the Department of Health. What does the Board of Health do? And how many other agencies have boards running them that don't know what's going on in them? Why did 200 people lose their jobs? Erroneously in the Department of Health, when they thought they were out of money and they had an accounting system that couldn't even reflect the accuracy of the Department of Health. When we think about that's just one department without adequate oversight, the call ought to be for our legislature to go into special session to start oversighting every agency. Ultimately, though, we don't need a tax increase to pay our teachers competitive wages. I don't have any problem with use taxes if, in fact, we need to build roads, but highway taxes ought to go for highways. They shouldn't be going for something other than that. And if you look at the last few months, actually, if you look at the last 9 months of revenue in the state of Oklahoma, we're going to have about $1.3 billion more than we had last year at this exact same time. And that's without the tax increase. That's without the tax increase. The legislature has raised taxes on Oklahomans $1.1 billion since 2015. What have they done with it? Where is it? Where's the accountability? So for me, transparency and accountability comes first. Then if we have to raise taxes, we'll raise taxes. But raising taxes is unnecessary, and it also doesn't solve the problems of the teachers. We'll be back here in 5 years because we created a tax that only applies to the teachers for 1 year. And then it can be used for anything, not teacher pay increases. So what we really lack in our legislature and in our executive branch is leadership. And I'm challenging them today to stand up and lead Oklahoma in a conservative fashion that makes sure Oklahomans know how their money's spent, that our money is spent efficiently and accurately for a limited government, and let the people decide if, in fact, what the legislature did was appropriate in terms of the tax increase. Nobody's arguing that our teachers shouldn't be paid better. I actually believe they should be paid a lot more because they are the ones that form and help direct the character of our children. And we don't have a bigger asset than that. So I hope the people that are listening to this will just go and look at the website, Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, and see if, in fact, they don't agree with what we're doing and why we're doing it, and go from there. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Well, Senator, given all that went on this spring, do you think the legislature has the ability to fix this?
Sure.
They struggled to get where they were.
They have the ability to change all they have to do is say, we're going to, one of two things. We're either going to do oversight, which they've done none of. I mean, that's the first question Oklahomans ought to be asking. What's the transparency on how we spend our money? Our governor vetoed the transparency bill. The state legislators don't even know how the government grants are being spent that are coming from the federal government. And because they don't have a bicameral, bipartisan committee that works when they're not in session, we're never going to know how the money's spent in Oklahoma. So can they fix it? Sure, they can fix it. They can fix anything if, in fact, they will. But pleasing special interest is what happened.
Anybody?
You say they were, please elaborate on that. You say they were just pleasing special interest in what? Passing a tax increase?
Well, in passing a tax increase, and where's the number one special interest? It's the bureaucracy in Oklahoma that hadn't been looked at, that has constantly expanded, in spite of everybody crying crocodile tears when we were in a recession. So my question to the legislature and to the governor is, where's the oversight? How come Oklahomans don't know how our money's being spent? Why can't we find out? Why doesn't the legislature know how our money's being spent? So we're raising $500 million in taxes and not knowing how we're spending the other billions that we're paying? Nobody would do that with their personal budget. The first thing you do is you wouldn't go borrow money until you looked at how do we get out of this mess. So I'm highly critical of what happened. I love our state. I want us to be competitive. We're not competitive. Half our kids leave our state. Our most valuable asset leaves our state. And it's because of our state government. It's not because we don't have a great state with great people. It's because we have ineffective and lazy government.
All goes well, the petition gets signed to get on the ballot. What do you think your actual chances are of getting it?
I don't know. Look, that's a great question. If Oklahomans actually understand the issue and teachers actually understand how they were hoodwinked and used as pawns, I think it's a great chance. And then they'll have to call a special session and say, how are we going to allocate all this extra money? You heard the governor say, well, it's all going to go into the rainy day fund. So we're going to raise taxes on Oklahomans so we can put money into the rainy day fund? You know, to me, that's not leadership. I thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
What kind of reception have you guys gotten with your petitions out there across the state now? And,
Mixed. I mean, if we're out in public,
Come up to the microphone.
If we're out in public, we have people that thank us very much for what we're doing, but then we also have people that are opposed to what we're doing, and it's predominantly people that are in education that are opposed to it.
Misinformed.
And we've had a number of attacks and stuff, but it is what it is. We know that what we do is not going to be popular with everyone, but we do what we do because we feel like we owe it to our children and we owe it to our state. And it's time for people to stand up and say no more to the bureaucrats.
Let me just put one more thing. Wouldn't you love to see our state growing like Texas? I mean, who wouldn't? Wouldn't you love that? Well, it's possible, but it's not possible with the leadership we have right now. What we have to have is visionary leadership that calls us to a higher level of commitment and calls us to a commitment to make sure the money we spend is well spent. And we can compete with Texas. We shouldn't have to be their stepsister. We should be up there competing for every new job that comes into the South, and we're not. We should be leading the Southwest in new jobs. And we should not take second fiddle to Texas ever. And they're a great model. They're the 6th or 7th largest economy in the world. We could be there. Maybe not to that extent because we don't have the population, but we could certainly be growing and educating and holding accountable like they do. Just go look at the roads in Texas versus the roads here. Oh, that proves my point.
I'd like to say something also about when we're asking for people to contact their representatives and their senators, their state representatives and senators, in regard to signing on with Senator Dahlm's call for a special session. The legislature can call a special session with 2/3 of each house agreeing to it. And Dr. Coburn mentioned the transparency bill that was vetoed by Governor Fallin. That is one of the bills that can be brought up in this special session as well, that we can go in and override that and be able to have transparency in the way that our government spends our tax dollars. So I would encourage people to contact their state reps and senators. If House and Senate leadership and the governor isn't going to do it, then we the people are going to have to, and we can. But it takes boldness and it takes courage, and I would encourage everybody to join us.
By the way, I just know when the governor vetoed that bill, she said it was too expensive. The federal government did the whole thing with a gift from the Sunshine Foundation of the database to do that. And they'll give it to Oklahoma. So it's not expensive. But obfuscating what is the truth is what's expensive.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I got a granddaughter's birthday.
Awesome. I get to go meet a new grandson. I'm heading out to Louisiana to go meet a new grandson.
Thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Dr. Coburn.
Good to see you. How are you doing?
Which one of y'all did the